For those who see this as national liberation, for those who see the EU as a sovereignty-sapping monster, this is their moment. 11 p.m. GMT on January the 31st, 2020. Britain is no longer part of the European Union.
In Downing Street and in nearby Parliament Square, the countdown to Brexit. They gathered outside Parliament to celebrate. For them, this was a long time coming. 3.5 years since the referendum in 2016, 3.5 years of bitter debate and delay in Parliament and beyond. Nigel Farage, one of the architects of the Brexit campaign, was there to milk the moment.
We should celebrate the fact that, freed from the constraints of the European Union, we once again will be able to find our place in the world. We are able to re-engage with the Commonwealth, with America, with our friends all over the world.
Not everyone celebrated. Pro-EU Brits staged their own much quieter get-togethers. For them, this was a moment of mourning. This is still a deeply divided country.
The foundation of this country is built on democracy, and to finally have it after nearly 4 years, that's it really, that's what I'm happy about. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's taken 3.5 years and a load of children moaning about it.
I think that the European Union had a lot at fault, and had they been a bit more accommodating to David Cameron, this wouldn't have happened.
Boris Johnson, who staked his political career on Brexit and won the prime ministership, has marked it with an address to the nation.
When I look at the potential of this country waiting to be unleashed, I know that we can turn this opportunity into a stunning success. And whatever the bumps in the road ahead, I know that we will succeed. We have obeyed the will of the people. We've taken back the tools of self-government.
Never before has the EU had to do this. It hopes it never will have to again. Experienced only in expansion, now the EU has taken down a member's flag because it's left. Europe's leaders want to show that there's little to be gained from this.
We want to have the best possible relationship with the United Kingdom, but it will never be as good as membership.
For Europe, and for those who voted Remain, this is a moment of sadness. And in a sign of the constitutional challenges ahead for the UK, Brexit is boosting the calls in Scotland for independence.
It's very, very sad. I think what it really does, though, is it shows that there isn't really a future of Britain in Europe in the way that we've enjoyed over the last 30 or 40 years. But there is a future for Scotland in Europe.
But the Prime Minister Boris Johnson delivered a statement to the nation on social media calling for unity.
My job is to bring this country together now and take us forward. The most important thing to say tonight is that this is not an end, but a beginning. This is the moment when the dawn breaks and the curtain goes up on a new act in our great national drama.
Earlier, he'd held a cabinet meeting in the north of England, a highly symbolic gesture, underlying his promise that Brexit and his new government can bring new prosperity to regions left behind. Early next week, he will deliver a key speech, setting out his vision for Britain's future place in the world now that it's going it alone. Meanwhile, in Brussels, they lowered the British flag outside the EU Parliament, marking the first country to ever leave.
Musk's latest big disruptive idea. How about this? Underground tunnels to beat traffic congestion. Last night in Los Angeles, he unveiled the first tunnel in what he hopes will become a network of underground highways, he says. Now, this initial stretch is only for test and won't be used by the public. It runs between the headquarters of Musk's SpaceX company and a parking lot behind a closed business a little more than a mile away. When Musk took me for a ride the other day, it was an eye-opening 4-minute journey.
You can go ahead, I think.
How fast is this?
This is still slow. We're only doing 20 miles an hour.
Oh my God, oh my
we'll
God,
speed
oh
up
my God.
After we get around the corner.
This isn't just any tunnel.
We can get 100, no problem, but we'll take it easy for you.
It's Elon Musk tunnel. And to understand why we're speeding through it, you need to go back a couple of years. when he decided he had had enough of Los Angeles traffic gridlock.
Either we try something new or we will be stuck in traffic hell for the rest of our lives. I started thinking, well, maybe this could be underground.
This is the underground network he envisions. Electric cars using street-level elevators to drop down into a series of tunnels. Autonomous technology in the cars ensure that they don't run into each other, despite going speeds over 125 miles an hour.
Tunnels are, in my view, the only solution to urban congestion because we have a 2D road network and we have buildings in 3D. And everyone wants to pile out of those buildings and into those buildings at the same time. Obviously, you're going to have a traffic jam.
No one was building such a system, so Musk formed the amusingly named Boring Company and started building it himself. He hired Steve Davis to be the company's new president. Because Steve, you're an engineer at SpaceX. You've been there for
15 years.
So when Elon came to you and said, I have this idea to do what did he say to you?
Go dig a hole.
He had no experience doing tunnels and said, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
Steve, that didn't give you pause?
Learn from scratch. So probably the first day you won't be the best at it, but then you'll get better.
About a year ago, that company started digging what has become today's 1.2-mile-long test tunnel. It's in Hawthorne, near Los Angeles.
Unless we can make tunnel digging at least 10 times cheaper, then digging tunnels will not be an effective means of alleviating traffic. It'll just cost too much. These are tunnel reinforcing segments.
Musk's vision depends on him being able to do it all, faster and cheaper than current industry standards. While modern subway tunnels in Los Angeles cost around $900 million per mile, he says he built this for about $10 million. One way he saved money, he literally made it dirt cheap.
When digging tunnels, it's quite expensive to have all this dirt trucked off somewhere. And we're like, well, why don't we try to use that dirt for something useful? So we are creating bricks on site. And you can pick them up for they're very cheap, 10 cents a brick.
So all of these bricks came out of the tunnel?
Yes.
But speeding up the process was also a cause for concern. The city of Hawthorne granted Musk an exemption from typical environmental impact reviews required under California law. And in nearby neighborhoods where the tunnel runs, some residents told us they never even heard about the project until it was almost finished. Some members of the community seem to feel that they didn't really have input into that decision.
We actually sent letters to everyone. I think that there's normally like a radius that you have to inform people. We doubled that radius and informed people. You know, and I think in any situation, there's going to be a few percentage of people that grumble.
There was also grumbling from another area, the wealthier Los Angeles neighborhood of Brentwood, which is nearby Musk's proposed second test tunnel along busy Sepulveda Boulevard. Community groups sued the city of Los Angeles for also granting an environmental review waiver there. In August, Musk announced he was no longer building that tunnel.
There's some like retired lawyers in Brentwood that all they do is sue, like literally, they just automatically sue. It's like a hobby.
But those lawsuits sort of shut it down in Sepulveda, did it not?
No, we decided that another test tunnel isn't really needed. I'm not fazed by lawsuits.
You can't go off the tracks, right?
No,
that's what you're saying?
You cannot go off the tracks.
At first glance, the tunnel is a bit daunting. It's only 12 feet in diameter, so it's much more claustrophobic than most transportation tunnels.
We'll be able to go like 150 miles an hour if we want.
If you're going that fast, what's to prevent it from crashing into another car ahead of you? That's what I worry about that.
Because the autopilot has radar and cameras that will automatically slow you down before you impact another car. You would only be allowed to go through the tunnel on autopilot.
At the end of our 4-minute adventure, the verdict? That was scary, but that was kind of cool. And by the time we started up the elevator that returned us to the surface...
It'll be faster in practice. This is just going slow because it's early days.
I don't want to go any faster than what we just did. No, thank you. And when it was all over, it was easier to see how this proof of concept tunnel could actually be a preview of the world to come.
At this point, I'm confident this can revolutionize cities and get rid of
It's coming in late today of what authorities are now calling the longest underground tunnel ever discovered along the U.S.-Mexico border. You'll see it tonight, nearly a mile long, 70 feet down, with electricity, ventilation, even an elevator. So where did it lead? Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas tonight.
Tonight, you're looking inside the longest illegal underground tunnel ever discovered on the southern border. From Tijuana, Mexico to San Diego, nearly a mile long. Authorities suspect it's been used by cartels to smuggle tons of drugs into the U.S.
They'll try anything they can to get their illicit products into the United States.
About 70 feet below ground, a highly sophisticated tunnel built with an elevator, rail system, ventilation, electrical cables, and panels. Likely a multi-million-dollar construction project by drug cartels which have the resources of Fortune 500 companies. Authorities suspect that the tunnel, 5.5 feet tall by 2 feet wide, has contributed to the epidemic of overdose deaths here at home.
The tunnel discovery is another drastic reminder of how serious the drug problem is and how the cartels will take risks and expend endless amounts of money to get deadly drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine into the United States.
May be fueling Mexico's drug violence. According to Mexico's Secretariat of National Defense, 1 in 3 firearms smuggled into the country come from Europe.
Illegal guns smuggled into Mexico from the U.S. Weapons like these can be blamed for many of the cartel killings south of the border. In all, there were 35,000 homicides in Mexico last year. But a study from Armament Research Services shows that it's not only American-made guns that are making it into the hands of the cartels. Nearly a third of the 2 million guns smuggled into Mexico in the past decade are from Europe. Legally and illegally, weapons from munitions factories in EU nations like Austria, Belgium, Italy, Romania, Spain, and the UK are making their way to Mexico. Serbia, a non-EU state, is also a contributor. According to the Campaign Against Arms Trade, in 2018, EU member states licensed $136 million worth of arms exports to Mexico. Since 2018, the UK alone has exported $6 million worth of weapons to Mexico, including $3.6 million in small arms. When talking about legal guns, European manufacturers arm Mexico's soldiers and police, but these weapons make their way to the drug cartels as well. Licensed exports from Europe are perfectly legal, but knowing whom the end user is, well, that's another story. Post-delivery checks of legal guns are not part of the equation, never mind the thousands of illegally smuggled firearms. One thing we know is no matter what the route, guns are ending up with the bad guys. For example, corrupt Mexican Navy members are said to be connected to the infamous Los Zetas cartel. And in 2018, Mexican officials revealed that nearly 5,000 guns were stolen from that country's police in the preceding 5 years. Legal and illegal, Europe's guns are everywhere in Mexico. Mexico's Secretariat of National Defense data shows that out of 116,560 guns seized from Europe and the US between the years of 2010 and 2018, 5 European brands made the top 20, with Italy's Beretta leading the EU list. In fact, United Nations Comtrade data shows that Italy exported 3 times more handguns to Mexico than the US in 2018. Although it looks like European gun manufacturers have no qualms about contributing to the bloodbath on Mexican soil, their reckless profits in that part of the world are facing resistance. This past October, Mexico's foreign minister unveiled Operation Frozen, a joint initiative between the US and Mexico to stop the traffic of arms. Sources say a similar agreement between the EU and Mexico is likely, and Europeans seem to be supportive of measures to stop the flow from the EU. Last year, German gunmaker Heckler & Koch was fined an equivalent of $4.8 million when assault rifles from that company were illegally diverted to Mexico. In addition, post-delivery controls that ensure the guns are going to the right people seem to be catching on in Europe.